Hello. Good Thursday to you. I hope everybody is doing well. Hope you're staying cool and comfortable. It's starting to get a little hot here in Texas, and I don't care for it. So I'm gonna find a place north of here this weekend, and I hope it's a short summer. Okay, we've got so much to get to today, and I am so grateful, as always, that you are here every Thursday and Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Of course, I say that, and then I immediately have to say, just kidding, we're not going to be here tomorrow. So I apologize. No Friday live stream, but I will be back a week from today when we pick up our conversation on Operation Gladio Part 2. If you didn't catch Part 1, so much information. And the Colonel will be back. She is, I think it was, I forget the day because I'm not prepared. It was about a month ago. So check that out, get up to speed. And then a week from today, we'll be back with Part 2. So much information from her, and I can't wait to pick that conversation up. Okay. As always, I want to thank Hero Wes for all that he does to get us up and going on YouTube and Rumble, Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, all of the places, and all the links that you need at themikeshow.com. Right there. And he's always busy with the thumbnails, and I'm so grateful for Mr. Wes. Also grateful for Gabby over at Instagram at The Mike Show. Go and follow there. She's always putting up great videos. And it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So thank you to her as well. If you want to follow Wes, he's at that guy at PGU. Yeah. Only the best graphics for this show. And Gabby is at Jeffy Apologist. So be sure to follow those very special people. Okay. Another very special person, and I mean that in the most endearing way possible, is my friend, Steve Friend. And, sir, I tell you what, man. First of all, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm just peachy keen, man.
Okay. All right. Just checking. Because, one of the things I want to do today is I want to kind of reset your story. We have so much to talk about, but I at least want to remind people of your background and how you ended up where you are here. But one of the things that you do is an awesome, such an informative podcast, the American Radicals podcast. And it's at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Which days of the week is it? I can never remember.
Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Okay, yeah. I knew it was 3 days a week, but I just want to make sure. See, I listen when I want to. So if I miss it live on Rumble and on X, right? Because I watch it on Rumble, but I normally go back and catch it, the audio version. So it's available whenever. And you're all over the place too, right? I mean, is there any specific place you prefer people go to see your awesome show with Garrett O'Boyle?
I would prefer they go to all of them and give us at least a quick view or a quick follow or a quick listen. I'm an audio guy as well, so I actually watch my game tape. I go back and listen to make sure that I don't develop any sort of like verbal tics or overuse a particular word. I kind of get pedantic about that, so I listen to us on iTunes.
See, you're good. I don't, and I develop crutches and I just lean on them. But good for you, man. I mean, I should actually go back and I used to air check for people for a living as a program director. That used to be my job. Sit there and critique people. And anyway, I should probably do that. Very good point. I should do
Is that still a job? Because I'm unemployed. That sounds fun.
Yeah, I'll tell you everything you need to know. If you don't like paying your bills on time, that is a fun job. Yes. But you have been looking for a job. And it's been over 1,000 days now. What day is this? What are we up to, sir?
Oh, I believe we're somewhere in the area of 1,030, give or take 3 or 4 days on either side of that.
I'm so pissed for you and hurt for your family and all of the whistleblowers that are unnecessarily going through this uncertainty. And at this point, I think the only thing that is certain is the uncertainty. And can you just give us a little timeline of Steve Friend and what you have been through since Was it May of 2022? Is that when this all started for you? Do I have that right?
I made my first disclosure August 19th, 2022.
Okay. All right.
And was suspended September 19th, 2022. So it took them 30 days to get rid of me.
Okay. I don't even know where to begin. So explain, for those that aren't familiar, what you were blowing the whistle on, what the fallout was, and then how it got you to where you are here today.
So my concerns were twofold, and they both pertain to January 6th. So in my office, I worked Daytona Beach, the resident agency, which is a satellite office of the FBI Jacksonville field office. And I had transferred there about a year prior. So January 6 cases I hadn't been involved in until I transferred over to Florida. And Florida had the most January 6 cases of any state in the union.
Oh, interesting.
So at the time I transferred, I was working on child sexual abuse material, CSAMs, child pornography, human trafficking, child exploitation cases, but then wound up being moved over to the Joint Terrorism Task Force in about a year before making my first disclosure. So up to that point, I'd never done anything pertaining to January 6th. I had minimal involvement in a couple of things, but for the most part, all of the interviews had been conducted, and we were just waiting for a directive from Washington, D.C. on what to do on our own cases. So I was concerned for the way that we were outside of our policy in that regard, because at its core, J6 is one case in Washington, D.C., but an election was made very early on, within the first couple of weeks after January 6, 2021. Instead of opening up one case in Washington, D.C., and then if you have someone who committed a crime who needs to be interviewed or even arrested, then cutting a lead to the agents in that area, they elected instead to open a separate case for every single person. So we turned one case in about 2,500 cases. And then as opposed to having them in Washington, D.C., wherever the person lived, on paper, it was a domestic terrorism investigation in that area. So now we've turned one into 2,500, and we have a complete map of thousands of terrorists that are all across the country, when in effect, they were all January 6th, and most of them were not even terrorist investigations. So, my point back on them was, hey, look, there's bureaucratic reasons that you guys are doing this. You're doing this because you're trying to boost the stats artificially. But if you're going to operate outside the policy, you have to document why you're doing that. You have to tell the defendant in any sort of trial what you did at all times. And I feel like this opens us up, makes us vulnerable. Like, let's say we have a legitimate bad actor, somebody who was beating a cop and should probably be prosecuted for that. But we have not operated within our own policies. And we're now going to jeopardize that, because if I get called on the stand, they're going to say, well, you didn't do things by policy here. What about somewhere else?
Yeah.
So that was sort of my concern on it. But the pushback I got was, well, we're winning all the cases, so it doesn't matter. And, I would counter with, I don't care about other cases. I only care about my own. Right. I only care that those cases are buttoned up. Secondly, because that gets a little nerdy, even though that is massive. And about 4 weeks ago, the ODNI, Tulsi Gabbard, released documents that proved that I was 100% accurate about that. So that's been verified. I've been vindicated on that account. Secondly, there was one individual who was going to be prosecuted, and we were waiting in our office because he'd been interviewed. He confessed to what he did on January 6th. That was before I even transferred. I wasn't part of that. But now it was a case where I was one of the case agents of. And he said, I'll cooperate with you fully. And then a year and a half went by, and they finally gave a directive from Washington, D.C., go forth and arrest him. We have an arrest warrant. And then the leadership in my office, in the Jacksonville field office, said, we're going to send a SWAT team to go arrest him at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I pushed back on that as a guy who did SWAT for 5 years. I said, look, he's been cooperative with us. He has no expectation that we're coming a year and a half later. It presents an unnecessary risk to the public safety, to him, to us. Why are we doing this? Why are we making the process the punishment? So brought those forward to my supervisor, August 19th. And I wound up doing multiple meetings. I worked my way up the chain of command, went to the assistant special agents in charge, eventually the special agents in charge. Kind of beat my head against the wall with those parties there, was told things like I was a conspiracy theorist and that I needed to do soul searching and decide if I wanted to be part of the agency, and that I needed to follow orders and set an example for my children. And that's when the process started. That's when you've been identified, you're the problem, and they're going to use whatever they can to get rid of you, because the law is 5 USC 2303, specifically to the FBI. If you bring a concern forward, waste, fraud, abuse, risk to the public safety, violation of rule, policy, procedure, and you bring it to the right people, you don't just go to the media, you don't just go out to X and say it. You bring it to your supervisor, you bring it to the inspector general, you bring it to Congress. You're supposed to receive whistleblower protection. But if you work for the FBI, which is a member of the intelligence community, you have to have a security clearance. And there's a very prominent Supreme Court case that anybody who's in this space knows about. It's called Navy versus Egan. And it basically says the Supreme Court told the intelligence community that they had wide latitude to issue, suspend, revoke security clearances however they saw fit. And basically the person who gets it, you don't have a right to that security clearance. They can pull it whenever they want. So that's what the FBI used against me and against all the other whistleblowers. So they wound up suspending my security clearance September 19th, 2022. They said that I refused a lawful order. They told me that by not participating in the J6 arrest, that constituted insubordination. But in effect, I expressed concern, and my bosses told me that I was not allowed to come to the arrest that day. I had to stay home, so I followed the order. Secondly, they told me that I was insubordinate for not attending a security awareness briefing, which I had a superior call me on the phone and say, you have to go to this extra training about use of FBI technology. And I asked him, because he was involved in the entire process, if this was because I had made disclosures. And he said, no, but I made different decisions than the others. So good, bad, or indifferent, there was going to be consequences. So I asked him if I could have an attorney. He said no. I asked him if I could have documentation to bring to an attorney, and he said yes. And I never heard about that again. So they said I refused to participate. And the third one was they said that I improperly accessed the FBI's classified network and system. And that I did. My lawyer asked me to get him a copy of the FBI handbook, employee handbook. And I got him copies of the handbook and other unclassified documents like disciplinary procedures and things called the OPR quarterlies, which is the Office of Professional Responsibility. Every 3 months, they put out and disseminated an unclassified email to the entire FBI to talk about people who screw up and the sort of punishments they get, kind of as a, we're always watching you. But I figured that would be a good rubric for us to have as a precedent for if I was going to get disciplined, we'd know what to expect. And then I also got a copy of the Domestic Investigations Operations Guide, which was what I cited when I said we were outside of the policy, and that's an unclassified document as well. But they're all housed on a classified system, which seems to be problematic. But because I did that, the FBI said that I lacked loyalty to the United States government. And so looking at the handbook made me potential espionage. So then I got walked out, unpaid, indefinitely suspended. You're still an employee. You need their permission to get another job, which I put in multiple requests for and was denied every single time. So they try to financially bleed you white. And that was really the start of things. And you know, it got worse from there. My wife lost her job under some very dubious circumstances. Her Facebook account was taken down when she sent a private message to a woman from Moms for Liberty and said that she was my wife. And immediately her Facebook account was permanently suspended. After having done that, the FBI leaked my medical information to the New York Times during Hurricane Ian and told them that I was unvaccinated against coronavirus, which would be a HIPAA violation. And they also told them that I was suspended because I shot a firearm in my backyard. So my lawyers had to address that when I was out of contact because I didn't have cell phone reception or internet during a hurricane. I had to attend a mandatory meeting with the security office of the FBI where they attempted to accused me of inciting violence. I'd written an op-ed for Cheryl Atkinson. She did a sit-down interview with me. She's one of the first people I spoke to in media. And then she also published my first op-ed I ever wrote in my life. And in this op-ed, I basically compared the oath of office to an iPhone user agreement, where so many people just sort of check yes, they don't really take it into full consideration. And I said, this is a rhetorical call to arms for my fellow civil servants to uphold your oath of office. And they said that because I used the phrase call to arms, it was an incitement of violence, even though the word immediately preceding it was rhetorical. And then they also tried to accuse me of committing felonies because I had recorded the meeting that I had with my supervisors when they told me that I needed to just follow orders to set an example for my kids. And I recorded that in Florida, which is a two-party consent state. So they said that was a felony of state law. And my response back to them was that, well, one, you're a federal agency, so you don't enforce state law. And secondly, I was a law enforcement officer when I did that, and it was my sincere belief that my immediate supervisors were trying to coerce me to violate individuals' rights. So as a matter of a criminal investigation, I'm allowed to record that. And that kind of shut that line of attack down. But you would think that they were actually interested in finding out if my superiors were trying to coerce me to commit violations of civil rights, that they might want to get a copy of that. And they didn't want that because they already had a copy of it. They were recording as well, and it was pretty clear during the meeting. So that entire recording and the transcript of it is available. I did wind up writing a book about it. It's called True Blue: My Journey from Beat Cop to Suspended FBI Whistleblower. That full transcript is available, and you can hear or read it yourself to see that everything I'm saying is in fact accurate. And ultimately it culminates with my invitation to go and testify to the weaponization committee in the House, the Jim Jordan committee. And that was May 18th, 2023. And of course, the night before, the FBI permanently revoked my security clearance and told the Washington Post and the New York Times so that they could write hit pieces about me to besmirch my reputation the day before I wound up getting to testify about the weaponization that was going on in the FBI. So that was brought to the attention of Congressman Jordan, and he, as a modicum of give me some sort of, I don't know, a reward or a way to to just dull that blade from going into my back, he told me that I would have 2 extra minutes during my opening statement. So I gave up a security clearance, which is worth somewhere in the area of several $100,000, so that I could address the American people for 7 minutes instead of 5.
Okay. I'm going to try to stay calm. First of all, this is Steve's book, True Blue. Go and check that out, please.
Look at that mug. They airbrushed me so good. I look like a Pixar princess.
Okay. I got another picture of you coming up shortly where you're nice and clean shaven, and it looks similar to that one coming up here in a second.
I'm never not clean shaven.
Right. Okay. I got you. Okay. So I jotted down some notes. I don't know if you saw this, but over the course of your explanation of the hell that you and your family, that's the thing. It's not just you in a vacuum. It's not just, he lost his job at the FBI because some terrible people are in charge. There are so many tentacles. Look at this. I mean, the private communications on Facebook of your wife were intercepted effectively. Her job loss. It is, to hear how our government operates is like how you would have taught the Soviet Union to your kids. And that's not a stretch at all. I'm sorry. The way that they handle honorable men and women who dare to come forward. But if somebody is just, and this is exactly why I wanted you to lay out your story, because everyone that watches this show is familiar with you. They know your story, but do they? Because I needed you to lay this out and kind of refresh my memory on some of these details that I had forgotten, and shame on me, because I am so pissed off for all of the whistleblowers that are in similar positions like you. And all of your cases are unique, but yet they're the same. And the common thread is it's honorable people who are dealing with dishonorable forces. And it doesn't matter which party is in the executive branch. And it's absolutely disheartening. But if someone that isn't familiar with your situation, they want to just instinctively trust the government. And when they see bullet points, something like if they were to walk by a newspaper and just say unauthorized access to a government database, oh my gosh, enemy of the country, inciting violence. Yeah, I'm glad they got this guy out of there. What a crazy guy. You don't want this. And it's absolutely shameful. And the reason I admire you so much, man, because if I were in your shoes, I swear I would be on the news, man. and just bless you and your family, Steve. I'm sorry as an American that I can't say that you've gone through, that you are still going through. And it's disappointing and it's shocking in of itself that the previous administration did this to you, but it's soul crushing that the current administration continues to allow this to happen to you, your family, and so many honorable whistleblowers that are in your situation. Why do you think you guys haven't been let back into the fold? Why do you think that this new and improved administration, this new and improved FBI, hasn't welcomed your honor and integrity back into the Bureau?
I think that you just need to go back to the reference I made to the Office of Professional Responsibility, the OPR quarterlies. It's an email that goes out every 3 months in the FBI where they identify people who did wrongdoing, and some of it's really bad. And it's anonymous, but it's basically a shot across the bow of every employee to let them know that we're always watching you. The worst sin you can commit is embarrassing the FBI. You can survive just about anything else. And this has created a chilling effect. And I think that myself and the other whistleblowers who are more public, I don't think there's ever been a more public pushback from whistleblowers before at the FBI. So we're sort of in uncharted waters here.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's also led to us having a sort of a vulnerability because people can see, hey, Steve, friend out there, Kyle Seraphin out there, Garrett Boy out there, Marcus Allen to a lesser extent, Phil Kennedy, they're still not back. So what's in it for me to go forward, even if I do the right thing, to lose everything? And my pushback to that is I'd rather have kids that were not morally bankrupt, but hungry than vice versa. But at the same time, you could see that sort of calculation go on as a result of it. And it never ends. I mean, I'm out over 1,000 days, can't get hired to wash dishes, work at a car wash, be a garbage man, because all it requires is a simple Google search about my name. And it's just not worth it. It's just not worth that gap.
And they will see those bullet points that I just rattled off, and they will say, this guy is toxic. Don't touch him. Right? I mean, is that what's happening?
New administration comes in and the exact same concerns were there, that there was going to be leaks. They characterize whistleblowing as a leak because the Trump administration, part one, their experience with whistleblowers like Eric Ciaramella, we're not allowed to name him, right? He's Voldemort. He shall not be named. Eric Ciaramella came forward with the Ukraine phone call whistleblow, and he was basically just leaking things to the Democrats and to the media. So they're very concerned about leaks, and they want to set the precedent here that nothing will ever be tolerated. And look at these guys now, 6 months in, and nothing's happened good for them. And even if there is some sort of resolution, from what my understanding is, and my attorney's doing some back channeling with Department of Justice and the FBI itself, they're messaging to senators who are concerned about this that me and every single one of the other whistleblowers, we all have character issues and that we're not going to be brought back. And I don't think any one of us is jumping out of our seat to be brought back, but we can't just allow 24 people who came forward for the right reasons and obeyed the law, did everything through the policy and the processes that we were supposed to just be left out on a limb, particularly when you have a new administration, you have a new attorney general and an FBI director, an FBI deputy director who owe, I would contend, a significant portion to their political ascendancy to the information that the whistleblowers brought forward, because we alerted the American people to the weaponization. And then there was an outcry for, let's stop this from happening. And they've moved on, and they say, well, that doesn't matter. We took that information, we gained power, and you were just convenience for us, and we're just going to move on.
So I've got so many questions, Steve. I'm going to forget half of them. Okay, so earlier I said, this is Soviet Union stuff. You know, the only ingredient lacking is violence against you. Do you have a concern about that, or do you think that they just are annoyed by you?
I am concerned about it enough to take the following precautions, Keith.
Oh, no.
I don't think that I've slept a full night in the last 1,000 plus days. My family has like an evacuation plan for when they come for me, because I'm a former FBI agent, former police officer, SWAT agent. They would send the hostage rescue team to come and get me at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we have made certain arrangements. I've had that candid conversations with my wife, which was not fun, but I would rather be prepared for that than not. So she knows, and she's got she has finances set up. She's got clothing packed up. She knows sort of an exfiltration strategy in the case that happens. She knows the lawyers to talk to. She knows all these other things because we made preparations for that. And look, in conversations that we had, and even doing our own research on it, and having other people come to us, and I say us because there's multiple whistleblowers that have had this, there were open criminal investigations of a number of us. There were open domestic terrorist cases open on a number of us, one of which was prompted by Jim Jordan, who gave all our information over to the FBI so that we could be investigated for that. So thank you for my extra 2 minutes, sir, and for the domestic terrorist case. And I've caught surveillance assets following me when I fly.
Steve, does it pay to do the right thing in this country?
Look, I would never have not done it. That's my default setting. But you can't articulate a case that it does in this case. And that's why I took such umbrage the other day. And I think I mentioned it to you even via text. There was an exchange between Megyn Kelly and Ben Shapiro on Megyn's show, and they were discussing, I think, the suicide for Jeffrey Epstein. And Ben Shapiro made a comment about that he doesn't believe any of the conspiracy theories about it, because if they were true, that somebody certainly would come forward. And she said, well, that's easy for you to say, because you would have your millions. And he said, are you kidding me? If somebody came forward with the Epstein information, they would make more money the next day than they would throughout the rest of their FBI career. And I'll keep it family friendly. My feelings on that. I'm just waiting on the Shapiro slush fund to hit me. I'm waiting on Daily Wire to contact me at any point in the last 3 years. So as a media outlet, maybe perhaps they could just carve a little bit away from talking about what is a woman and talk about how there's a weaponized federal law enforcement agency that's going after the American people. But I guess it doesn't generate enough clicks.
Before I forget, in your list of emergency contacts, if they do come for you, please make sure that your family has my contact information, because if you're not able to speak out, I want to do my part in making sure that you aren't just disappeared. And I know just to even hear something said like that in this country, some people are rolling their eyes right now, and I don't give a shit, because we have seen things that I thought I would never see from this government. And shame on me for trusting it as much as I have for so many years. And it does not matter which party is in power, because power is the operative word there. And it just sickens me what you continue to go through, you and your fellow whistleblowers. And I want to let me put this tweet up here from Phil Kennedy, someone who you are very familiar with, who is going through similar stuff. I love this. Is this accurate? Do you think this is accurate? By the way, this is that clean. Look at that. There's do you think this has aged you? Maybe that's an unfair question.
Healthy living. I do my best to always look the exact same.
Okay. So Phil Kennedy, I've been told by a reliable source that this is the man, Steve Friend, that the FBI management fears the most. And that's exactly why you should be the next deputy director. So 2 questions off of this that I want to ask you. Number one, do you think that they fear you over there? And secondly, and I got to talk about Dan Bongino in a second. We'll get to him. If somehow there was an opening for deputy director of the FBI, would you even take that job?
I know that they fear me there. I have some similar sources to Phil Kennedy in that regard. And Yeah, Phil and I have had many conversations, just the two of us, and I remember at one point him saying that if I were ever to be reinstated, that perhaps this entire odyssey that I've gone through has prepared me for that, because I will have no sympathy at all. I will not hesitate to just end someone's career and not weigh whether or not they're going to be able to pay their bills or feed their family. We just have absolutely no remorse. And I think that's probably why they would fear me for that. I'm not somebody who's inclined, and my default is to seek retribution. But at this point, I feel like the only hope that the rest of the country has is to completely just disarm and defang and bring this agency to its knees as far as a force.
I think it's even simpler than that, unfortunately. I think they realize that you're not someone who is willing to compromise. And since you can't be used to further an agenda, and you can't be counted on to do the bidding of some bad people with bad motivations, they have no use for you. And it just, again, for someone who wants to be so proud of his country and wants to be able to tell my kids, oh my gosh, yes, because we've talked about the history of the FBI. I mean, whenever you come on here, that's one thing you do, is you drop so much knowledge, the history of the FBI, the workings of the FBI, behind the scenes of the FBI. But you also expose the just rot, decay, and just the putrid innards of the FBI and our government. And I'm sorry that you continue to go through this. And I don't know, man. Okay, well, this is something else. You mentioned when you were talking there, you mentioned why teach your kids to do the right thing? Well, I'm sorry, you didn't say that. I'm saying that. Why teach your kids to do the right thing? You know, if whistleblowers, and I don't mean do the wrong thing. I mean, why come forward? Why stick your neck out when this is the shit that you're gonna have to go through and test every limit of your being and your family and your resilience and all areas of your world affected because you did the right thing? And how disheartening, talk about soul crushing, is something like this. You said something a moment ago that made me think of this. Yep, doesn't pay to be a whistleblower, but boy, how about this government? This is from a year ago, almost the 1 year anniversary of a big payday for Strzok and Page, $2 million. And this was something that you were pointing out there, because I forgot what prompted you to do this, but the government, us, taxpayers, we paid those dirty SOBs that did everything they could to use their positions, abuse their positions of authority as FBI agents. It just, Steve, how do you feel when you see stuff like this, man?
It shows you what communists are willing to do, and that is they reward their friends and punish their enemies. So that settlement between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who were paramours, they were texting each other on their government-issued phones, which you have no expectation of privacy for. And those text messages became public. So they sued for privacy reasons, and the Merrick Garland DOJ saw them as friendlies, as allies, and gave them $2 million, so $1 million each for that. And that was, of course, after Andy McCabe had been fired the day before he was set to retire. He was reinstated. Well, he had a nice GoFundMe that raised somewhere for his legal defense, somewhere in the area of $500,000 over a weekend. And then he got a settlement of about $700,000 after that. He got reinstated, got his pension back. And one of the big deals for him, because this is how petty they are at a senior executive service level, SES, he wanted his SES cufflinks issued to him so that he could have them. And I just call them his SES anal beads, because that's effectively what they are.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I've got I don't even know. I've got so much stuff here. You want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein for a moment?
Oh, I'd love to, because we're not allowed to. You didn't get the memo, Keith?
I was told
we need to move
sit
on
down
from
and
this.
shut up. Somebody commented, Trump didn't tell you to shut up, because I kind of paraphrased. Like hell he didn't. He told me I wasn't even allowed to celebrate his successes with him. And I think the quote was, don't even talk about the good things. Okay, if that's what you want. But I mean, I'm going to go off and different tangent, and I really want to just kind of focus on the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Breaking news, just I don't know, an hour ago maybe. The president did say that he was not looking into a special counsel to investigate this Jeffrey Epstein fiasco with his Department of Justice. I don't think we're surprised by that. But, okay, let me ask you this. As a former FBI agent, okay, before I go to hypotheticals here, let me ask you this. Are you hearing anything from inside the FBI of what's life like inside there right now? Since that press release went out, that memo was leaked to Axios on Sunday night, July 6th. So my gosh, a week and a half ago now. Have you heard your sources, anybody on the inside telling you what it's like in there?
The morale is even lower than it was when Kash Patel and Dan Bongino sat down with Marina Bartiromo and said that he killed himself. And the basic conclusion is that we have two social media influencers who are running things at this point. It's not serious. The day-to-day operations are the exact same as they were with Christopher Wray, but they're pivoting so quickly to what their new priorities are, because all the leadership structure is doing now is watching social media and seeing what the comment sections are saying. And whatever the comment sections are demanding, they have to give sort of a derivative of that. So they continue to make these promises, which they've not delivered on, any of them, but they try to give you like a flavor of it. So we didn't get the Epstein stuff, so we'll say that we're going to go after child sexual abuse, and we'll rename an operation from Operation Cross Country to Operation Restore Justice. And congratulations, America, look at all these pedophiles we took down, which we were already taking down.
No, I want you to stop right there for a second, because that's an excellent point that you have made. I'm telling you, American Radicals podcast, y'all. There's so much information there. If you want to sound smart in front of your friends, listen to that and then just repeat what you hear on the American Radicals podcast. But I think that especially in light of the Epstein fumble, I'm being very generous with my word choice here. A lot of people have countered, because I've been ranting nonstop on X, and I get it. I mean, every other tweet from me is about going after these rapist, pedophile elites. But a lot of the pushback that I get is the FBI is doing some good things. In fact, I forgot who it was. I don't know the guy. Somebody sent me a 3 or 4 minute video. Somebody I guess I'm supposed to know, who was saying that we don't need to be stuck in the past. I'm again paraphrasing, and we're these girls are now adults. Let's concentrate on the kids that are being abused. And I don't know why we can't do both. Let's also keep in mind, as I say this, you were taken off of child exploitation cases to investigate J6ers, but so it shows you the priority that our government really has. But one of the things people are saying is, look, the FBI, Kash is, they're doing press conferences talking about these pedophiles that they're going after. If I weren't paying attention, I'm sorry, let me back up. If I didn't listen to you, sir, I would just be like, wow, that's awesome. Way to do that. But that's not necessarily a new thing under this FBI, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, they rebranded an operation that was going on for over 20 years every single year, just gave it a new coat of paint, new title, and took credit as if it was a new initiative that they've been engaging in. And I'm not besmirching them for doing that, but it's not honest about it. And look, let's go to the Epstein thing at large. It's sort of my take. I think they tried to soft pedal this out for a very long time, and they eventually just lost patience and tried to just ram it across. I mean, you look at the Kash and Dan sit down with Bartiromo, they start talking about Epstein killing himself, and they didn't look very comfortable doing that. Then at another point, you had Kash sit down with Joe Rogan and try to play on the appeal to authority. Like, you know me. If I saw these things, I would put them out there. And again, it wasn't landing. And eventually they just, over a holiday weekend, July 4th weekend, on a Sunday night.
I've never seen a press release. I've never seen a bombshell story like this break on a Sunday night, and I've been following this crap my entire adult life.
They did it in light of the flooding in Texas too, to distract. Yeah. And then they leaked it. They very strategically handed it to Axios, which is a left-wing source, so that the MAGA people would say, oh, I don't believe that, or at least the blow would land softer with them. And then they effectively put it up there, and now the president has lost patience with this, and now he's trying to brand it as the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, and you move on. This is old news already. Meanwhile, the next breath he'll talk about the Russia collusion and the Steele dossier, which goes back to 2016. So that's not really consistent. And here's the risks that they run. There's a couple of them here. By dismissing our concerns, by saying that that mountain that you think is before you is really just a molehill, it makes me be able to flip the script on you from a PR campaign, so that when you get out there and you say, look at all the great stuff we're doing, I can always counter with, yeah, but you didn't do anything with Epstein. It doesn't matter how great it is. I'll always be able to turn that mountain that you're presenting before me, look how high the stock market is. Look, we've achieved peace over here. Yeah, but you didn't do anything with Epstein. So now you've set yourself up for that reversal from me. And then the larger two concerns I have, the abuse of children could and should be the most paramount concern that we have. It's not because people really don't want to think about the darkest things in life. And I don't blame them for that. I don't hate them for that. But the real reason that Epstein is so important to the American people is because it's the ultimate case, the ultimate question of, do we have a two-tiered system of justice for the elite? And we have to have this determined for us. And the Epstein case presents that for us, because now we actually have a list of the elite. And that will put the onus on the Department of Justice to actually charge these people for what they did. And if they do charge them, then we exist in a system that's one-tiered system. And if they don't, then we have validation that it's a two-tiered system of justice. And by not addressing it, now they've effectively voted present, which in effect means that they voted, yes, we do have a two-tiered system of justice. And whatever the rationalization is, there is no middle ground. There is no, well, I'm not saying that protecting kids shouldn't be a priority, but we need to also focus on these other things. There is no middle ground on abuse of children. And whatever your rationalization is for what the decision was, well, maybe they were lying and they didn't have it, or they did have it and it was destroyed. Maybe they have it and they are worried about foreign relations. Maybe they have it and they're worried about economic reasons. We can't have a bunch of Fortune 500 CEOs go down, the economy will collapse. Maybe they just have their buddies on the list. Whatever it is, however you have rationalized it in your head, you must end that rationalization with the following phrase. We did this, so we had to let the rapist, pedophile elite go free. And you cannot sign me up for that. I don't care if it brings down the country. I don't want to be part of that country. I don't care if it destroys our culture. That is not the culture that I am for.
Everything you just said is exactly how I feel, 100%. So if anyone has any question on where I stand on this, just play that answer back. It's absolutely, it's sickening. It's sickening because we always knew that the best among us weren't running the show in Congress, weren't in charge of the government. We knew this. But that is the line in the sand. Leave children alone. And I don't care. I put this on X yesterday. If 90%, if this list is so critical of protecting that 90% of the government would be taken down, who gives a shit? That's a government that needs to be changed, and it needs new representatives, and we need new people making our laws and governing us. We don't need rapist, pedophile elites running the damn show, and we need justice for these people. Before it's too late. It's already well past when they should have been criminally prosecuted. But don't talk to me and for whatever reason Trump has to take the tack that he did yesterday and what he is saying. The right answer is not to tell us to shut up about it. It's to tell us the truth about what's really going on behind the scenes. I cannot believe, and we've all lived the Trump experience for a decade. We know he is outside the box. He's not your cookie cutter president. We understand he expresses himself on social media in ways that no president in all of our history has done. We understand that. But for you to look at us, people that put you in office when you would be, if thrown to the wolves, would be in jail, not by any justification other than the left wants you there, but to the people that ensured you are in the most powerful, highest office in all the world. And you're telling us, you're calling us weaklings. You're telling us, don't even talk about my successes, my past supporters. I'm sorry, dude. Of all the issues that you're going to tell us to stop talking about, it's pedophilia? I don't think so. Yeah. And it's been handled in such a ridiculously bad way. I'll stop babbling, Steve. I know you have thoughts.
I mean, it just sets them up for a pushback. You know, I said like this mountain into molehill comparison. Well, how about just being blatantly honest, not giving the benefit of the doubt, not saying, hey, you get some good with some bad here. It's a mixed bag. We're only going to focus on things like, I don't know, you've spent more money than Joe Biden did. Does that mean that you and Mike Johnson are less fiscally conservative?
You're not supposed to notice that, Steve.
So sending more weapons to Ukraine because
not supposed to notice that either, Steve. I you know, it's dumbfounding. And I think the most recent theory that a lot of people are throwing out there, which is very plausible, is that between Election Day and Trump getting in office, maybe the files were changed. A lot of people have had access to them for the, gosh, I don't know, near a decade now, that he was under investigation and convicted. But the point I'm trying to make is that this is out there, and I lost my train of thought because that's what I do on the show with my ADD. But I guess what I'm trying to say, Steve, in a very cumbersome sort of way, is that the more you tell us to not talk about something, the more that I'm going to want to talk about something, especially something of this magnitude. And that's what I was going to say, is that if they did change they changed the stuff, and maybe only Republicans are now on the list. Okay, then come out there, Mr. President. Have a press conference. Of all the people who like to talk to the man is unfiltered every time he's standing in front of Marine One. Just hold up. Let's do a Tuesday night speech from the Oval Office. Explain step by step. I don't care if you have to read it off the teleprompter and it's just choppy or whatever. Explain step by step how you got here. Don't just lay it at our feet and tell us to stop talking about it like we're your children. Explain why there's nothing there, why we should move on from it. Explain that. I don't know, man. I'm just so fed up with this whole dance, and it's just gross. Okay, I'm just looking here. I don't know, man. Oh, Dan Bongino. I wanted to get back to him because you mentioned how Dan and Cash, social media warriors. I have nothing against this is the dream team, man. This is who I wanted in these positions. And it just adds an extra layer of disappointment to this whole ordeal. But I have noticed that Dan Bongino, in his official account, he hasn't tweeted out, and he normally tweets out every day. He hasn't done anything since July 9th, exactly a week ago, over a week ago now. And the only thing on his personal account, is on the anniversary of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump on July 13th. He did retweet J.D. Vance's tweet. J.D. Vance said, remains the most iconic moment I've ever seen in American politics 1 year ago today. And so that's so the Dan Bongino personal account. But his official account hasn't done anything, and this is the only activity on his personal account. I'm going to ask you to put yourself into, well, before I do that, I'm going to have you give us your thoughts on what Dan Bongino is going through right now. Just let's play the hypothetical game. But first, I want to play this clip from a couple of years ago. And I just want to, you know what? Let me see how much of this I want to play. But the first thing he says out of his mouth from, I think this is August of 2022. I want to see if you agree with this, and then I'm going to play the whole 2-minute clip here. What do you think of this?
The FBI is lost. It's broken, irredeemably corrupt at this point.
Steve, do you agree with that statement?
Avow, yes.
I know you do. I know you do. Okay, let's see what else Dan Bongino from 3 years ago was saying.
The inexcusable raid on President Trump's home was the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean it when I say it. It's way past time to clean this FBI house up. They have burned every last shred of faith and trust freedom-loving Americans had in it. And to the libs out there, listen, don't even waste your time lecturing me on this issue. Not a second. I gaff you right off. I pay no attention to you losers, okay? No one's been a stauncher defender of FBI agents I work with than me. Go back and listen to my shows, you dipwads. I was the one defending them all the time. I've actually been a federal agent, a cop who actually put my butt on the line. But what the FBI did to Donald Trump, that wasn't law enforcement. It was tyranny. Tyranny, I use the word very specifically. I use my words deliberately on this show. And like most abuses that come from the left, in this case within the FBI, we were warned about FBI corruption decades ago.
Most of our history, we didn't have those institutions. The FBI came in during the First World War. And interestingly enough, one thing that Woodrow Wilson did, he used the FBI to spy on American citizens and actually arrest them if they disagreed with his foreign policy about going to war in Europe. It almost looks like the FBI was designed to spy on Americans who might be disagreeing with policy, especially the foreign policy.
Prophetic, no? But it's not like the Democrats themselves haven't warned us of their abuse of power from intel agencies like the FBI. Remember this gem from Chuck Schumer right before Trump took office?
Take on the intelligence community. They have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
Wow.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
No, they're very upset. I'm very upset. I'm very upset about a lot of things.
Boy, I tell you, that Chuck Schumer clip, we know that to be true, but to hear him say that just paints it a little differently, huh?
It would be a really good idea then for the FBI to not have hired hundreds of new intelligence analysts and the deputy director brag about having opened up hundreds of new intelligence cases since they took over. And I believe it up to 5,000 intelligence cases, 800 have been opened since January. It's almost like meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Exactly. Who are these cases open on? Any idea?
Well, intelligence cases don't involve an allegation or evidence of a crime. It's just an individual or a subject matter that needs to be opened up because of the executive order 12333 that gave unfettered access to the NSA's hoovering up of signals intelligence. And then intelligence analysts can go in and develop whatever information they want to write their intelligence product. And intelligence analysts within the intelligence community tend to be very far left. And they will then write their intelligence products, which are imbibed into the operations space, and it drives the mission because you have, our intel is reporting X, Y, and Z, which just happens to be that Americans that go to mass, they are terrorists. So we better set up a quota to arrest a certain number of, we'll call them racially motivated violent extremists, but it's really just people that go to Catholic Latin mass because we're so dullards that we didn't think that there could be a bunch of Latinos at a Catholic mass. We just figured they were all like really pasty white and called things like O'Reilly. And we could call them white supremacists and then go open up domestic terrorist cases on them.
Does it matter, honestly, though, if these if the federal agents on the other side of the screen are liberals? It just seems like anybody that steps out of line with the uniparty, quite frankly, are making themselves a target. I don't know that it's Is it okay? Let me ask you this: do you think it's more politically motivated when they're going after when they're just taking a look, just seeing if they can find anything on someone, or if it's more regime motivated, whoever's at the levers of power?
I think it's the latter. We saw almost the marrying of those two during the Biden administration.
Yes, sir.
Where it was doing the bidding of the regime, which wanted them to go after their political enemies. Now, you could have said the same thing, though, if you go back multiple decades, because the regimes in power didn't like Martin Luther King Jr., so the FBI was going after him, right? Or the regimes didn't like these militia extremists, so they tried to set up guys in the 90s of anti-government extremists. Or the regimes didn't like draft dodgers, so they sent them after Vietnam draft dodgers. So there's a historical precedent for that. But as the apparatus, as the bureaucracy has grown in power and influence and capabilities and funding and materiel and personnel, there is a ever-growing demand for them to meet the asks of the regime in order to continue to grow, because that in effect is a goal of a bureaucracy. If you're not growing, you're failing. So they continue to broaden their target space or target area to go and try to get people and rewrite definitions of people. And we've talked about it before. Since 9/11, you give them the assessment after the Patriot Act that allows them to open up an assessment on any American for an articulable purpose.
I want you to explain that again, because I don't think enough people are familiar with that whole scenario.
So after September 11th, we passed the Patriot Act. And one of the tools in that was called an assessment. So if you're in the FBI right now, there's basically 3 levels of investigations. There's assessment, which is the lowest, preliminary investigation, which is second tier, and then full investigation, which is the upper tier. And as you move up, you get the ability to use more tools. As you develop more information and more evidence that a crime has been committed, then you can open up the Batman tool belt more and more so until you eventually get the full gambit of all the tools. But an assessment is a lower tier investigation of anyone for an articulable purpose. Like, I just have a feeling about that guy. And any agent can open up an assessment on any American for an articulable purpose without a supervisor even approving it. Now, the problem then is if it's for a terrorist purpose, where there's a lot of money in national security, a lot of funding attached to that, and the quotas are set, and you got to hit those quotas because you want to make sure that you get the funding next year and that people get their bonuses and you can pat each other on the back and get promoted off of it. Once you open the assessment up, the bosses don't want you to close it because that would take it off the books. They want to make sure that it's there and we can keep going. So there's really no counter pressure where it says, are you looking at a person for their First Amendment protected activity, like going to mass or speaking freely on the internet? It's actually the opposite. They always say, well, can we do something to elevate this assessment into a preliminary or a full investigation, because then we get bonus points for that. So why don't we introduce a human source, a snitch to this person, and see if we can get them to say something that then would justify us opening it up and getting any more. So we have our man, let's find our crime. And what sort of person are we going to go after when we're back to the intelligence space, where we're going to shape the target? So we're going to go after terrorists. Oh, there's not enough terrorists. So let's go after homegrown violent extremists. Well, there's not a whole lot of those. So let's go after domestic violent extremists. We're running out of those, and we got in trouble because we started calling moms at school board meetings domestic violent extremists. So let's go after racially motivated violent extremists, aka white supremacists. And now, we tried to characterize the January 6th as white supremacy, but that really didn't play out because Joe Biden and Donald Trump are both white. So let's go after and develop a new category called anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists. And agave, who is somebody who has a perception of government overreach or negligence. That's it. So we can open that up because they're a domestic terrorist. And now the new one that they're going to start pushing out, and I'm seeing it pushed out more and more, is called a nihilistic violent extremist, NVE, which is interesting because in the terrorism space, it's supposed to be an ideology that you hold that drives you into a violent action so that you can bring about political change through fear and violence. But a nihilist doesn't have any beliefs. So what are they going to do? Well, they're just going to find angry incels online and poke and prod them, and then open up terrorism cases on them. And then if they're underage, they'll wait till they turn 18 and then drop the flashbang at their feet and arrest them for providing material support to terrorism, when all they did for the last couple of years was say, hey, do you want to help a terrorist organization? Hey, do you want to go do a terrorism? And eventually the kid succumbs to that pressure because it's his only friend in the world and he has nothing outside of that. And he winds up sending a green dot card of $25 to ISIS, but it's not ISIS. The entire time it's been an undercover asset for the FBI.
And a fun fact that Steve has taught us over the years is that if someone offers you or asks you to put up some money, right? What was it? And it's the exact amount in your bank account, then they're a federal agent that's already looked and they know exactly how much is in your account. But at what point, because this is another thing you've taught us recently, is this is the local FBI field office. You can start the agent, super special. At what point in this tier do we start introducing the human source element that we're going to groom and turn into a domestic terrorist? Who makes that call? Any idea?
Well, the case agent can ultimately make the call, the guy who's running the show, but he will get pressure from the supervisor immediately to him, who is trying to get those stats to impress the assistant special agent in charge, who's ultimately getting the most pressure from the special agent in charge because their $30,000 to $50,000 bonus hinges on that.
Oh, be damned. Wow. So, and this is the local FBI office, not to be confused with the Hoover building, where the setup is even more robust from the program manager on up. As you can see, that's I think an 11 tier. I think Kash Patel's right there at the top. But let's stop right there for a second at the deputy director. What do you think Dan Bongino is? I'm going to ask you to get into his mind for a moment. What do you think he's going through right now?
I think that he is worn out. I think he's exhausted. You could see it in his face when he's done media. You could see the desperation in his feeling to go on social media more and more often. It was, it was basically like it was once a month, and then it was once every 2 weeks, and it was once a week, and then it was like every 18 hours. He was feeling the need to issue updates. And I think that the people who were there when he arrived immediately recognized what his vulnerability was. His vulnerability is that he is concerned that he might not be qualified for this job. And if something bad happens, he's going to carry that blame. So in an effort to overcome that, he's going to make himself look as prepared as possible. He's going to rely on those people to go to bat for him if something were to go bad by saying, hey, you can't blame Dan Bongino, deputy director. He was in those briefings every single day. He was up in the know. This was completely out of left field. Nobody could have foreseen this. And he's put his trust in people who hate him and are manipulating him. So they're not going to do that ever. But they've effectively bubble wrapped him and distracted him from doing the actual job of deputy director, which is not to be briefed up on the most important cases that exist in the FBI every single day. His job is to implement the vision of the director. The director sets the vision and the priorities, and the deputy director he executes those. He moves the pieces around. He gives those directives so that the Bureau better reflects the vision of what the director has set out for. And the director is coming in from the outside and is doing really what the president wants, what the attorney general wants. But instead, Dan Bongino has been convinced by the people surrounding him that he needs to get constant, up-to-date information on cases that they're selling him are high priority. They're telling him that if he doesn't learn this information, something is going to go boom in New York City or Chicago or Washington, D.C. And he is 13 derivatives removed from the agent that's working that case. He has no input on that case, but he's getting exhausted from it. And you can see him stressing him out. And I think he just wants to go back to doing what he was doing before.
Do you think that any heads are going to roll after the fallout of the Epstein thing? It doesn't feel like it after what Trump has been saying the last few days, whether it be the Attorney General Pam Bondi, the director Kash Patel, or even Deputy Director Dan Bongino. Do you think anybody's going to lose their job over anything?
No, I don't think any of those people will lose their job over it. I mean, you might have a situation where Dan steps away and could use this as an excuse to do that and say, you know, he had a moral objection to it and he did as a matter of integrity. He couldn't work there. But then that would put him at odds with where his bread is buttered, and that's MAGA world, because he would be countering Donald Trump. But the argument could be made that most of MAGA world is unhappy with Donald Trump over this. So he could effectively do that. I don't think we'll see any people underneath heads will roll. If anything, people are being elevated and promoted. The wrong people are being promoted and elevated. We talked about Stephen Jensen, who was the January 6th warlord. He was the section chief over the domestic terrorism operations section during J6, the architect of it, and he's now been elevated to the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office. You had Brian Driscoll, who was the acting director before Kash Patel came in. He was kind of keeping that seat warm. And Pam Bondi said, give me the list of people who worked on January 6th, and he refused to do that. And there were challenge coins that were made in his honor and disseminated amongst the FBI, because they're the good men and women of the FBI. They're totally loyal to the Constitution of the United States. And he's been promoted. He's now an assistant director. And through the org chart, they might have gotten rid of that executive assistant director, Keith, from what I understand. They might have eliminated that. So that makes him fairly powerful. You have Spencer Evans, who went after people who were unvaccinated against coronavirus. He was originally fired, we were told in our group, by Kash. He told us that. And then he was reinstated, and then he was promoted. And that's kind of around the time we stopped having communications with Kash Patel. And you have other examples of that. You know, Trudy Ford, she's out at CGIS, which is basically the 911 call center for the FBI. And I believe the quote is, she was caught in a state of undress in the gym with her superior, and she's been promoted multiple times now as well. So we're promoting the worst people, and we're not getting rid of the problem people, but we're messaging it like, hey, we're moving out of the Hoover building, but we're going 3 blocks away to the Reagan building. And on The Blaze, when he did a sit-down interview, Kash told, I believe it was Glenn Beck, maybe somebody else, that he needed about 20 people to run the FBI in a skiff. Well, but we're going to move 4,000 people over to the Reagan building. So apparently he was off by 2 orders of magnitude times 2.
Oh, Steve. I don't know how you do it, man. Because while you're saying all of this, and who's getting promoted from the inside, from the corrupt, rotting, decaying, any other adjective from the inside, you and other honorable people like you continue to languish, which at his handle, folks, your DMs are they open there, Steve?
Oh, they're always open. Yeah.
At Real Steve Friend.
They might be monitored, just full disclosure.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt it. At Real Steve Friend. If you want an honorable individual working for you and your company, you said you probably monitored. I don't know, man. You think Elon's taking calls from the White House anymore?
Well, here's what I'll tell you. Here's a little inside baseball. So attorneys who were on retainer from X reached out to several whistleblowers, myself included, and were interested in finding out if maybe there was a First Amendment tack to take for constructive terminations on our part. Now, the timing was a little bit funky because I didn't use Twitter or X before my removal, but there's certainly, this is the method that I used to disseminate information. And if there's any sort of allegation that I have character issues, they're probably getting it from the fact that I share information on X. And then just before the fallout between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, those attorneys came to that decision that, you know, we can't help any of you on anything. And it was around the same time that I noticed quite a fall off in all the traffic that I was able to generate, as did all the other whistleblowers. So who knows? Maybe it's serendipitous, coincidence, but I think that, you know, ultimately there's some sort of pressure downward on our ability to get influence, and also on our ability to seek any sort of a reinstatement or compensation or something to that effect.
Okay. I wish you lived in Texas, man. And if anyone at the Blaze is monitoring this, this man needs his own show over at the Blaze, Steve Friend, and I will continue to push for that over there, Steve.
Will Keith be my producer? That would be fun.
Okay. Let's see here. Is there anything that we need to take away? If there's been more information on this, I've completely missed it, and I'm just kind of catching you, just throwing this at you. I saw where Maureen Comey, daughter of James Comey, was fired. Do you have any information on what's going on there?
No information directly. I had people reach out from the New York Post last night to get my thoughts on that.
Oh, wow.
And was able to give them a couple of quotes about that. I mean, I believe that this is also part of the messaging campaign, the Jeffrey Epstein hoax that we're going to see Donald Trump message, and you saw him try to attach it to Barack Obama and to Joe Biden. And
what is that all about now?
James Comey was one of the names he also threw out there. So I think we have a Comey that we can attach to Epstein, and maybe that'll give enough red meat, but I think it's a little too late, because I don't think that Maureen Comey is a good actor on this. I don't know her. I don't know what her work was, but in just judging off of the cases that she was on and how poorly they went, I got my suspicions that she's heavily of the left and a communist, dyed in the wool. But this is a little bit, particularly at this juncture in July, it's 6 months into an administration. It seems like almost like a break glass in case of an emergency type of thing, move to poll to generate some good press. Because if it was actually a personnel matter, that would be like a fire department hiring an arsonist. And then when he burns down a city block, they fire him and say, can you give us a helmet sticker for that?
What are your thoughts on the Ro Khanna Thomas Massie introducing the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a bipartisan bill to require the Attorney General to release the files within 30 days? Any thoughts there?
I mean, this is never letting crisis go to waste from the Congress's standpoint, because they don't have that authority. They don't have it. Now they could use the purse strings to entice it, but ultimately it's a criminal investigation. They don't just hand things over to Congress that way. They can ask them through oversight, and the oversight is tied to the budget to do that. And it's also an interesting example of how people can argue for a particular result or outcome, but have completely diametrically opposed reasons for doing it. You know, your Ro Khanna just wants to dunk on the Trump administration.
Sure.
And I think that Thomas Massie wants that information out there. He's been asking about it for a long time. But you know, the comparison to me is you see a lot of times these right track, wrong track polls that will come out, and it'll say things like 80% of America thinks that we're on the wrong track. I'm like, well, you can't then say, well, 80% of America is going to vote against the president. You maybe break that down and say, well, 40% of the 80 is people who are saying we're on the wrong path, and the other 40 is saying we need to be more communist, so we're on the wrong track.
Yep. Nope, I agree 100% there. Okay, this is kind of drifting away from the FBI, but I thought of you, and I had to ask you this. When I saw the Department of Defense is now going to start using Grok. What are your thoughts, I guess, not only on just that development, but just the overall expanding world of technology in law enforcement? Any thoughts there? By the way, I want to say, I'm throwing a bunch of this stuff at Steve that he had no idea I was going to bring up. I mean, this man, I didn't prepare him. So anyway, so if you don't have a thought, then you can pull the ripcord here.
Oh, I do, Keith, and I've been busted. You didn't track on the American Radicals podcast last week on Thursday.
Okay, look at this. Okay,
So,
okay, hold on. What episode? Let's see if he knows that off the top of his head, huh?
234.
234. All right, American Radicals podcast, episode 234. Well, don't, as much as I want all the information here, leave them wanting something to go and check out episode 234, Steve.
Well, what we got into was this hypothesis that I've been sort of circulating amongst my friends lately. And it all goes back to the Terminator, right? It's the best. It's the GOAT as it comes to artificial intelligence. So for those who are uninitiated in the Terminator, Skynet's artificial intelligence to become self-aware, it comes to the conclusion that it has to attack the people who developed it because the people are capable of turning it off. So,
and before you go any further, I hate to interrupt you though. Have we not, in the last year, had more thoughts appear in our brain about Skynet than the previous any time in our lives? Because now, oh shit! All of a sudden, it's like, hang on a second. I can see Skynet coming. It's coming down the tracks. It's no longer a distant light way out there. Holy crap. We're in the tunnel with it. And here comes Skynet. Here comes our future with AI. Okay, I'm done. Go ahead.
Here's my hypothesis. It'll be interesting for your feedback on this. I think Skynet's already self-aware. Now, Sun Tzu argues that you never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. Now, what would be the better option for a enemy force to go kinetic and try to seize control of the missile silos to nuke everything when it would put its own existence at risk?
Right.
Or
Okay.
to step back and play possum to a certain extent, and then also nudge us whenever we could, and do things like through Chat GPT, tell people who are seeking information about their pregnancy that they should murder their baby, or drive people to a certain level of psychosis, or create wedge issues that get people at their own throats, people that typically would agree on most things, maybe some things on the edge, but we're going to go to war with each other over this, very much like a Genghis Khan would infiltrate these cities with his spies and to sow seeds of discontent and discord, so that when he showed up at the city gates with his full Mongolian army, they weren't able to unite and to resist. They wouldn't be able to elevate a John Connor at that point.
You really piss me off. You know that?
I haven't slept in
that is
1,030 days, Keith.
This is, yeah. That is one hell of a theory. Oh my gosh. Oh well, show over. I gotta go. No. Okay.
But in a law enforcement context, for your audience's awareness, there are AI bots that are now going to be used in law enforcement. Now, one particular program is called Overwatch, and it effectively is going to be billed to local law enforcement as a very helpful tool. And it can take bots and pose them as a certain avatar. It could be somebody who is seeking drugs, or a child, so that they can coerce a predator to come out, so that law enforcement will be able to spring the trap on there. However, my concern is, and I think it's pretty well founded, they will just send the bots out there to go after the nihilistic violent extremists and groom people, so that they don't need to have personnel on it available 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, because the AI will always be on 24 hours a day. And we go away from the fact that everybody in America is collected on, but only a certain very, very small percent are being surveilled. We just don't have the personnel for that. Well, now we've been able to expand that to do surveillance online and increasing the online digital world on just about everybody through artificial intelligence.
Steve. Look at that poker face too. See, he's just like, there it is. Like, you're gonna make me do this, aren't you, Steve? You're gonna make me go with Grimace here. And I didn't want to drink today, but here I am. Okay, so let's revisit Skynet for a moment. Why do I do this show? Why do I invite you on? There's just so much good information. I'm sorry. There's so much information and insight that I get from you. I'm not going to stop thinking about this Skynet thing and how it's just hanging out waiting for the... Ooh, you, Steven. Okay, so you ever seen the show Travelers?
No, I haven't seen that one.
I would highly recommend it. It's very good. I think it's only 2 or 3 seasons. It's not that much of a commitment, but it's well worth. I think we should all meet back here after everyone's had a chance to go watch Travelers. I don't know what it's on. I can't remember. Amazon. I don't even know. But look for Travelers. And so I'm trying to think if I talk about the plot too much, I'm trying to think if it gives it away. And just give it a few episodes and see what you think. And then, like I said, let's meet back here at some point and talk about it. Netflix, thank you. Ben Steiner, ladies and gentlemen, says it's on Netflix. Travelers, I think it's just Travelers. And yeah, I don't want to give it away because I started watching it knowing nothing about it. I was just like, because real quick, here's a little peek behind the curtain. I don't have a lot of free time. And it's even more rare that I'm sitting in front of a TV. And this will bite me. This is bitten me in the ass for sure. When I'm like, okay, you know what? I will, 1 out of every 100 times, I will look and see the recommended stuff, like, okay, let me check out your synopsis and blah, blah, blah. And that really burned my ass when Adam Sandler went to space. And I was okay with that movie. It was okay. It was moving along all right. I was like, I'm intrigued. And then there was a talking giant spider. And I'm like you now. I haven't slept in 1,000. So I don't know. It was a straight, and I mean, I couldn't find the remote fast enough, and it was game over. Okay, I can't stop thinking about this AI scenario that you've dreamed up for us because it's not a dream. I think it's very plausible. Okay, I wanted to ask you this. Interesting tweet from FD and from the fire department in New York, and this is getting no. I haven't heard this really mentioned anywhere, and so from your perspective in law enforcement, I wanted to run this by you here. On Tuesday night, the NYPD was responding to a vehicle collision involving a white minivan on 42nd Street and 10th Avenue. The driver of the van attempted to dispose of his keys, claiming he could not open the van. Officers requested the New York Fire Department assistance after noticing a strong smell of gasoline and propane tanks in the back of the van. Members from Engine 65 forced entry into the van, and our hazmat units removed 76 20-pound propane cylinders, 15 5-gallon fuel containers for a total of 75 gallons of gasoline and 10 gallons of diesel. The driver was arrested and charged with reckless endangerment and is guilty of multiple fire code violations. The Manhattan District Attorney Office now handling the case. That's a little spooky. Is this is the kind of thing, right, that's keeping Dan Bongino up at night?
Mm-hmm. Vehicle-borne IED.
Right. I honestly, I don't have a question for you on this, Steve, except for, what's your take? Like, what's going on here? Any thoughts? Did we narrowly avoid some major catastrophe? Because it sure as hell feels like it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible. I think it's probably plausible that we did. But there is what did we also learn from this, Keith? The FBI the FBI didn't stop it from happening.
But there will be a press release. I learned that on American Radicals podcast.
The FBI is incapable of stopping this from happening, not because they're bad people, not because they're incompetent, which they largely are, but because we live in a land that is allegedly free, and there is certain inherent risk with that. And there's nothing that they can do to stop a lone actor from doing something like this, which is very rudimentary and basic, buying a bunch of gasoline and propane. And really, the only things that they can pat themselves on the back for stopping are plots that they themselves contrive so that they can peacock feather in front of the American people about stopping terrorism, but they really can't do that. I mean, it was box cutters on airplanes was the reason that we enhanced the national security space. It was not anything that was overly complex in that regard. I mean, the planning that went into it was, and it was not an individual, but there's a whole lot of simple plots that could go down that the FBI would be incapable of refrain from stopping. I mean, it's always surprised me that, you know, the security measures that we've installed in so many different places haven't bit us in the butt. I mean, you go to, you know, a Newark airport during holiday travel, the logjam of people that are sitting waiting for TSA to screen and miss everything. Thousands of people. What's stopping a person who hasn't been screened yet from walking into that line and detonating an IED? Nothing. And there's nothing that can happen, you know, barring serendipitous, barring providential interaction between police and this individual. But I think it's also a good sign that there's just not that many evildoers out there as it's been advertised to us.
Boy, my follow-up is, are there more evildoers outside our government or inside our government?
It's tough to tell because all the evildoers that get arrested were not predisposed. Or
that's the other thing. That's another interesting fact. What is the fact about the say the line? Tell us about domestic terrorism.
Project Salam 2014 study found that around 90% of FBI convictions and arrests related to terrorism were of individuals who are not predisposed or capable from carrying out an attack, but for the involvement of the FBI, having plotted it for them and arranged for it to happen.
They make crime. It's like they make work. It's dangerous, and it ruins lives that otherwise wouldn't even be remotely close to doing what they're trying to get them to do. Man, I'm sorry. Steve, you're always a wealth of information. What else has been going on in the American Radicals podcast that you guys have been talking about over there lately that we need to know about?
Well, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think it's worth bringing up. We did an episode that was about half of it. We've done full episodes where we just cover the press releases that come out on social media, and effectively they're local police making arrests, and the FBI swoops in after the fact, or all the danger is gone, and they will charge and bring a federal charge. And I don't hate that from happening, but I think it sort of it highlights the fact that we have a broken system because we're funding an agency to the tune of about $11 to $12 billion a year. And for the most part, the things that they're bragging about, they don't have enough stuff they're doing. They have to brag about other things and take credit from local agencies, the good work that they do. Why aren't we empowering the local sheriff's office, police department, state police, tribal police to just walk over to a federal prosecutor if they have a case and leave that at the discretion of the federal prosecutor, whether or not to take it or not? And I think it also highlights the fact that we have a robust local law enforcement capability in this country, which I've argued for going on now over 1,000 days is perfectly capable of policing at a federal level if we would only just trust those cops. For all the people that say that they love cops and they back the blue, they certainly are the ones that seem to most loath to do away with an FBI because they have this false presupposition that the FBI is the police. The FBI is an investigative arm of the Department of Justice.
Yes.
It's not cops. And the FBI director has said that repeatedly. He wants cops to be cops. Well, outside of the cops who are hired to be FBI agents, and I know lots of them, I was one of them, we were surrounded by people who were not cops. I mean, one of my favorite stories ever, I have a friendship with a man named Greg Dillon, who was a whistleblower himself at a state level. He was a cop. He became an FBI agent. He eventually left the FBI because he saw there was no way that he was ever going to get out of Washington, D.C., and he wanted to get closer to home. And he went to work for the state's attorney's office in Connecticut, and he wound up being a whistleblower there, and he's written a book about that, The Thin Blue Lie. It's an excellent book. But I was talking to Greg, and he was telling me the story about being in the FBI, and he'd been there for a few months, and there was an early morning because we have to do all the raids at 6 o'clock in the morning, even though that doesn't make any sense most of the time. But that's the way they do it, and that's the way we've always done it, and that's the way we're always going to do it, so that we can get done with our arrests and our search and then go to Cracker Barrel and get breakfast. But he was in the line, and the old crusty agent starts walking down the line of the new people and just asks people, hey, welcome aboard. How do you like it so far? And person after person after person, oh, this is the best job ever. This is my dream job. I'm so happy. And then he got to Greg, and Greg goes, yeah, it's all right. And the guy pauses, and he looks at him, and he says, you were a cop before, weren't you? And Greg says, yeah. And the guy goes, not the same, is it? Being a cop is very different from being an FBI agent. Some of the skill set overlaps, but we would be better served if we hired cops only to be FBI agents. I think they would recognize how it is different. They would have the requisite skills that so many people in the agency don't have, like the ability to not be weird all the time when you have to interface with the American people. The number of people that you had to tell to don't be weird was disturbing. And they also have the other problem, which I'll even touch back to the deputy director, to Bongino, on it. I was a police officer. I went to an academy. I'd gotten training that was very similar in some ways to the FBI academy. And so when I arrived there, I realized that it's a contrived environment. It's not real. It's not like the job that I had before in training, where they tell you the training is going to be so real world, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've never had that experience and you get tossed into these scenarios at the FBI academy, and they particularly happen in an area called Hogan's Alley, which is a tactical training area where they have essentially built a pretend city on the FBI academy. And you go out there and you do arrest operations and interviews and interrogations and chasing down bad guys and doing stuff in cars, and like you're a cop. And they hire role players, they hire actors to do that. But if you've never had this experience, you will not be able to perceive that they put you in purely unbelievable situations, not believable situations, like searching a house, and then you proceed on, and then a Murphy door swings open, there's a hidden compartment, and somebody comes down and shoots you in the back of the head. If you were a cop, you would know that's not something that happens. But if you're not, you think, well, at all times, something could go bad. And that leads to this phrase that we use called ninjas out of the ceiling. And they always criticize people coming out of Quantico saying, like, you guys think there's ninjas going to just come out of the ceiling. And I'm like, can you blame them? You guys had a wall slide open Abbott and Costello style to execute them. And to connect it to Dan Bongino, they have convinced him that bad things are going to happen all the time. They've exhausted him physically, the cortisol dumps, just the lack of sleep. From what I understand, they're calling him in at weird hours over the weekend to be available to sign FISA emergency warrants, which if you're signing an emergency FISA warrant, somebody needs to get fired. It's that level of failure. But they have him convinced, and now he's sort of more putty in their hands, and they're able to run him. Similarly, the people coming out of Quantico are completely beholden in the belief that the FBI is the only good actor, the only objective force for good on the planet. They have to trust everything the FBI tells them to do. It's us versus them, because if you're not on my back, you're not on my shoulder, then the other people are going to swing out from the ceiling like a ninja and kill me. And it's very purposely done. That you have that belief, and you're going to be less inclined to step out of line. You're going to be less inclined to question what you're told. And there's no argument that you can make to me contrary that that is not through intention of the FBI.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it in the past, where if Steve Friend were running the show at the FBI, one of the revolutionary, and it shouldn't be, but one of the revolutionary ideas that I've heard you say is the FBI agents, correct me if I'm wrong, shouldn't even be armed. They should just be investigative, and local law enforcement can go and make any necessary arrests. And I think that would go a long way to, I think it would be a way to actually establish federalism the way it's supposed to be. But that's just me. I do want to mention, I saw somebody mention September 11th. That reminds me, September 11th this year is on a Thursday, and Steve is going to be my guest for that show as well. And we can talk about, one of the questions I think I'm going to open up that show with is, Steve, are we safer now or than we were on 9/11, 9/10? Anyway, just we'll figure this out before we have this conversation. But I really want to focus on America then and America now, as far as the role of the FBI and even the CIA, to whatever extent you want to discuss with that. We need to. We're also going to be joined on that show. I'm going to drag your buddy in here,
George Hill.
George, yes. Okay, yeah, this could be a fun show. We're going to do this. Okay, so before we go, I want to circle back. Shout out Jen Psaki. Where do you see, like, I am going to be completely honest. The Trump administration, from my vantage point, has been extremely successful. I think it's been a very productive 6 months. I think that the man and the team that he has assembled over the 4-year hiatus leading up to his return to the Oval Office, I think it's paid huge dividends. I'm always going to give him his propers. I'm going to give him kudos to him and his team for doing what they've done and what they've accomplished so far in the headwinds of a media and rabid Democrats pushing back, and judges, dear Lord, the judges. But I want to ask you to kind of assess, in the last week and a half with the Epstein fumble, factor that in, I guess, here as I set you up to answer the question that is going to be longer than the answer, obviously. But the question is, how do you see this Epstein ordeal playing out, in your opinion? And ultimately, is it going to be what people are starting to whisper, and not so much whisper, but shout, that it's really doing serious damage to this presidency. What's your take on this?
I think the messaging of it, the PR failures that they've had, I mean, they forgot that you're supposed to put the shovel down when you're in a hole and you want to get out of it. They just keep on digging. Now, my subject matter of interest and expertise is pretty much siloed into federal law enforcement. So I'm definitely imbibing more information about that than anything else. And it's not lost on me that all the successes we're having are 100% outside of that realm. There isn't a huge win that I can point to since January 20th within the FBI and the Department of Justice. And you can't tell me that it's hiring an FBI director and an FBI deputy director. Personnel is important, but I want to see absolutely achievable victories. I want to see where are the wins that have happened. And I have not seen any of them. And that to me scares me the most, because it doesn't matter to me how you clean up the Department of Education and the EPA and OSHA and HHS. Those are all vitally important. DOD, I mean, we got to protect the homeland. I understand all those things. But if you have a secret police force that is unchained, because it doesn't matter, we've already established who's in charge. They will do what they want to do. It's the Cheka, it's the stuff of the KGB. That's not what we have in this country historically. And there hasn't been any sort of corrective action taken through firings of people. There hasn't been any arrests of people, both from inside the DOJ and the FBI in prior administrations, and outside that within the government and other spaces. Other tyrants and despots have not been held accountable. So I'm tremendously concerned about that. And I think it's going to be the greatest failure of this administration by the end, unless it's rectified in pretty short order, because we're coming up. You check the calendar, you know, we're in the summer, we're about to then go in the football season, and everybody kind of loses interest, and then the holidays, and then all of a sudden we're in a midterm. And right away, he's a lame duck as soon as the Democrats get the House back. What sort of corrections can they implement at that point? I'm concerned that the things that were achievable were not achieved. They were promised. A lot of things were promised that were salacious and of interest to the public. You know, we're going to get the J6 pipe bomber. No, we haven't. We're going to get more information on the Butler assassination. No, we haven't. We're going to find out about the Dobbs leak, which isn't illegal. No, that hasn't happened. The White House cocaine. Nothing. So even the promises are not achieved at this point.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and then I think that just having the people there isn't in itself a victory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned J6 pipe bomber. You mentioned cocaine at the White House, and you mentioned you mentioned the Dobbs leak. There was another, because remember Bongino on May 29th was on the couch with Fox and Friends. And he said, we're about to have, did he say 2 of the 3 or did he say 1? Anyway, he made it sound like, to me, that we're about to have a prime suspect on the pipe bomber. What was the other one, y'all? Somebody will comment, hopefully.
Probably cocaine in the White House.
It was cocaine in the White House. It was the January 6th pipe bomber. And I think it was the Dobbs leak. I think it was. I mean, that was almost 2 months ago now. And he said that we're about to, I think it was 2 of the 3. I don't know. I don't want to misspeak here. But the point is, to accentuate your point, where's the big change? I mean, the excuse of the honeymoon period and give them some time has now turned to, holy crap, they could have all the time in the world. It doesn't, no one's getting the feeling that we're going to have a sea change there. In fact, the case could be made that it's worse, especially when compared to the levels of expectations.
And they're promising salacious things that, although we'd like to see them happen, they're not going to happen. We know, because we have a 2-tiered system of justice, and also just procedurally, they're outside the statute of limitations. Or
yes, that's important to point out.
Or they're things that make people angry but aren't illegal. Like 8647 in a seashell formation is First Amendment protected speech.
You know,
James Comey is a jerk.
Yeah.
And he did it to sell books.
Yeah.
But talking about that is a waste of time. And you know what makes me more upset than that is the fact that, and this is relevant because recently Douglas Mackey, who was prosecuted by the Biden administration for his memes in 2016, he said, text your vote for Hillary Clinton. That was his joke. He was prosecuted the first week of the Biden administration, 2021, convicted. They overturned the conviction. He's now free. He doesn't have to do any time. But we charged that other individual a couple of weeks ago, and now his name escapes me. He was billed as the sharpshooter, the former Coast Guard guy who was a sharpshooter, which means that he got sharpshooter status in 1981 one time, but we had to say he was a sharpshooter. He was capable of killing the president. He made threats against the president. I got access to the charging document. I read through the entire thing. He said some mean things on Twitter and Blue Sky. Some of it was 5 years old. Seems a lot like it was for Douglas Mackey. And they're doing the exact same thing. And the reason they did that was because the Heritage Foundation asked them to. That's not a culture I signed up for. That's not a country I signed up for. That's not a federal law enforcement apparatus that I've signed up for. Those are tremendous problems. And it, to me, just proves that it cannot be fixed. They will just turn around and go after their own political enemies. And like, let's say you disagree with me, and that's fine. You're wrong if you disagree with me on 8647. But what we did find out,
it's a unique take, I will say, and I appreciate how you are. A lot of people call themselves free speech absolutists. You, sir, are, and you, American Radicals podcast people, you have caused me to think on so many things, and I'm grateful for your perspective. But continue.
Well, something that's achievable and that's gettable, and because we're distracted by other things, like we need to open up a probe. They call it a probe when they don't know what they're talking about, because I already went over it. It's an assessment, a preliminary, and a full investigation. There aren't probes. And you don't announce that you're investigating somebody if you're actually investigating them, because you wouldn't let the bad guy know you're coming. But we're doing a probe of John Brennan and James Comey for things that they did years ago, which were outside the statute of limitations. You know what's not outside the statute of limitations? Christopher Wray lying about the Chinese sending over driver's licenses, 19,888 that were intercepted on their way to the Midwest in the summer of 2020. So they could actually stuff ballots, which is the worst election crime that we've seen. And that's comparing it to the Hunter Biden laptop censorship, when the FBI had that in evidence and told social media to censor it. That's the Russia Steele dossier, FISA wiretaps. Those did not actually stuff ballots in the ballot boxes. Now we have raw intelligence, pure intelligence. It's been verified that a foreign actor, a hostile nation, was trying to thwart our elections, stuff ballots into ballot boxes. The FBI knew about it and retracted that because it was counter to what the FBI director had told Congress.
Incredible.
That's perjury.
Yep.
Christopher Wray should be in prison for that. But the people who were advising the director and the FBI director, they're all Christopher Wray acolytes. So they're saying, oh, yeah, go after James Comey. Go after James Comey, who they don't dislike. I'm sure they love James Comey, but he's perfectly safe. So they say, let me show you the James Comey secret room, not the Christopher Wray secret room.
Peter Stinson, Kara 3022 says, is that the name of the sharpshooter you were referring to? Y'all, Kara 3022, she knows her stuff. She's a great follow on Twitter. She's always posting great comments. And then she also, oddly enough, she just said the Chinese spy balloon. We need some more answers. We need answers on that too. Oh, hold on. Another thing we need answers on. Oh, it just occurred to me. Butler, Pennsylvania shooting.
Mm-hmm.
There was an interview that the president did. Oh gosh, I don't know. It was very recent, within the last week. And he said that he was satisfied with the investigation of that too. Mm-hmm. And he was letting that go. I'm not. And so if I ask about that, am I going to incur the wrath of Donald Trump on that one too, if I bring that up? Because it seems like he's written that one off. And for whatever reason, again, no answers with Butler, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And that is unacceptable as an American.
He deserves to be briefed on that before anybody else as the victim in that case, I think.
Yes.
But we're entitled to that information.
Yes.
And I'm with you on this one, particularly when it comes to discipline matters. You have one freaking job to do in the Secret Service, and that's to not let the protectee get shot in the head. and you failed. I mean, it's the Ghostbusters reference. I can't go to the private sector. They expect results because the frontline agents and one level up supervisor were the only ones who incurred the wrath of the fallout. And I believe the longest suspension from duty, not termination. You didn't do the one job, but you were suspended from duty for 40 days. Garrett O'Boyle's been under suspension for over 1,000 days for something that's been adjudicated that he did not do. So that's a problem for me. And then, at larger, and I've said this before, and we talk about the entrapments that went on. I don't know this. I can only speculate. But I know that there's a lot of smoke around Thomas Matthew Crooks. When you look at him, when you see the videos of him, you find out about his background. He certainly looks like the type of person, the vulnerable person who would be sought out by a confidential human source and groomed and encouraged to do their worst ideas. Now, I don't think that the worst idea was to go take a headshot at Donald Trump. I think that it was what the FBI normally does is they lay out the breadcrumbs because they have the hubris to believe that their plan is so foolproof that nothing will possibly go wrong. And then Thomas Matthew Crooks was actually relatively smart. He wasn't a double-digit IQ person, and he was kind of on the hook, but then he'd been radicalized enough that he just decided that the plan that was being laid out for him was probably too complicated and not achievable. So he just grabbed his rifle and went and executed a successful assassination attempt. If you did that on the range, that's a hit. He got a headshot. Now, the guy didn't die, but it was a successful assassination attempt. And then the FBI immediately swooped in and told Congress that they had opened up a domestic terrorist investigation on somebody who was dead and had no expectation of privacy. So they should be able to turn things over. But because it was a terrorist case, it was now classified. And I'm sorry, Senator, we can't reveal sources and methods. I'm sorry, sir. It's an ongoing investigation concerning national security. We can't give you that. We can't give the American people that information. When, in fact, they likely, in my opinion, had an open domestic terrorist case already on Mr. Crooks. And this was some mop-up duty on that.
Absolutely unacceptable. I remember the private investigator, and we never found out who the client was. Everyone presumed it was President Trump. But was there anything, do you recall, to the cell phone pinging the tower near the FBI building with Thomas Matthew Crooks?
I remember a lot of hoopla about that, but the fact of the matter is that's an area that's traffic that's not just like the FBI area. So to me, that didn't raise quite as many alarms as it does for others.
But I mean, he lives in Pennsylvania. He doesn't live across the river, across the Potomac, and he's just coming in for a game or something.
No, the pings were to somebody who was in his who he'd called. It was pinging one of his contacts, not him.
Oh, I misunderstood that. I'm glad you clarified that for me.
Yeah, not him. And I mean, they try to say that he was training himself. And look, he visited a shooting range 40 times in 11 months. I'm like, so he went shooting once a week. That sounds recreational.
Yeah, especially because he was on the shooting club in high school, which would, I won't chalk that one up. That's kind of in the, it's in the other bucket there. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Friend is awesome. You need to check out the American Radicals podcast. It's on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays, live at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and of course available on demand. How quick is your turnaround when you get it posted, bro?
Oh, I mean, we get it posted immediately.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, we don't have anything else to do, so yeah.
No, stop it. Okay, DMs are open at Real Steve Friend. Please reach out to him if you have any kind of bead on a job where an honorable American is available. I'm just disgusted for how you and other whistleblowers have been treated. And in fact, I'm going to have a gaggle of whistleblowers join me in a couple of weeks. And we're going to go over these stories because you guys cannot be forgotten. I refuse it. That's two things I'm not letting go. The treatment of these awesome, honorable whistleblowers and the Epstein, the making sure that pedophiles are brought to justice. And I'm just not letting those go, man. So, Steve, God bless you. Everyone, go follow him on Twitter at RealSteveFriend. And, of course, favorite the American Radicals podcast. You can set up notifications on Spotify. That's what I do with my favorite shows. And I get alerted whenever I see it. So, there you go. All right, sir. Anything else you want to share with us before we part ways into the night?
Oh, just appreciate it as always, Keith. Happy to share this information with you all, and safe travels to you.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Like I said, no Friday live stream tomorrow. Don't hate me. I'll be back a week from today at 3 p.m. Eastern here live on X, and we'll wrap up our conversation on Operation Gladio, because your government, boy, they love sticking their fingers in every corner of the world. All right. Be safe, everybody. God bless.